What's up and welcome back. I'm John Stark from MacTheMovieGuy.com, your favorite blind film critic, and today I'm going to talk about September 5. Paramount is going with 5 and not 5th, even though naturally you'll look at the thing and you'll want to say 5th, September 5. So this film recently got a Best Picture nomination at the Golden Globes. It did pick up, I believe, a Best Editing nomination at Critics' Choice. So it's floating on its way toward maybe some Oscar nominations. And I was provided a screener for it. And the screener, thank God, thank you, Paramount, had audio description. I love that Paramount came in clutch. Both of the screeners I received from them both had accessibility, and that's amazing. Amazing. Because it allows me to have a fully formed opinion on the film, which works in their favor instead of me having this like, I don't know, I think it's good, you know. um, so, and for this, it matters a lot because it takes place almost entirely inside. I'm gonna use the term newsroom here, but it really is. I mean, it's also these are this is ABC Sports that's really covering this because they're there set up for the Olympics. This is not your typical newsroom. These people are not typically broadcasting breaking news stories, but they're what's on scene. They're the people who have the cameras on the ground for the Olympics. And when on September 5th, 1972, a group of terrorists took the Israeli team hostage in something that historically did not go well. I won't ruin it for you, but it did not go well. I don't feel weird in specifying exactly the end of this movie, but it did not go well. People died. I won't say how many, so that way they'll live in some sort of suspense. But sort of like the watching Titanic, and you're like, well, the Titanic sinks. But I didn't tell you if anybody on the board lives or dies. So that's just your content advisory headed into this, is that this is not the feel-good Christmas movie of the year. It is a movie that'll make you think, it's a movie that'll make you feel, and it's a movie that is only 95 minutes long, by the way. My favorite thing in the world is I heard Scott Mance say that you can watch September 5 twice before The Brutalist is even over, which is hilarious. When you really think about it, it's like, damn. I mean, there are a lot of movies that you could watch twice before a longer movie is over, but the fact that they could both be at the Best Picture, well, they actually are at the Golden Globes. They're both in contention against each other at the Golden Globes. You can actually watch that film twice if you wanted to like rewatch it to like discover its nuances before diving into The Brutalist again. So, but it is well paced. That 95 minutes is a tight runtime, and you never feel like it overstays its welcome. You never feel like it's wasting any of your time. If anything, you're like, I would stay here longer. I know this is a horrific event, but I feel like the energy behind this film is so strong, and it's almost like expertly edited. I totally understand why the editing nominations are here. Is because talk about a film that feels like there's no fat, there's no filler. You get from point A to point B in the best amount of time possible. The only thing that ends up happening is because maybe the film isn't 5 or 10 minutes longer, we don't sit as much with the performers, which is why you don't hear a whole lot of people talking about the cast, because pretty much everybody's here as a functional tool instead of as a performer. Like, everybody's performing the role that they performed in the booth that day, calling across to cameras, going and listening to German police radios, or trying to find out information, call in for interviews. We've got a guy playing Peter Jennings. The cast includes Peter Sarsgaard, who's never been nominated. It would have been nice if he had had a big moment, even a big speech, Like, I feel like this film is so close that if you'd just given Peter Sarsgaard one fantastic moment. I mean, Isabella Rossellini is coasting to a nomination right now based off of really like two great scenes in Conclave. And that's all Peter really needs here is like if he had had a great monologue, um, one that just really stood out. If we had taken the time to really just hear him, but he is barely in this. I mean, like he has one moment where he comes in and shouts at people, but it's like 5 seconds. Otherwise, he's sparsely used. This film, arguably the lead of the film is John Majaro. If we're talking about screen time, he's really the one that's trying to control most of this. Ben Chaplin's here as well. And obviously some other actors downstream from that. But those are sort of like the big three that are well recognized the most. And they're just all there to support the historical narrative of that day. What it was like to be in the booth and asking themselves like really tough questions like what happens, can we show somebody getting shot on live television? This had never been done before, and they weren't used to having to ask themselves those tough questions as newscasters because they were there to report on the Olympics. So they're sitting there asking themselves these tough questions, and they don't know. There's some really harsh realizations that come across throughout the film about whether or not they should and should not be broadcasting. There's a little bit of a battle because I guess there's one satellite, but like CBS wants to use it. So there's like, how do they work around that? Because they want to continue to control. They're the ones that are on the ground. They're the ones that have control over the Olympic feed. Much like if you think about the last Olympics we had, which was on NBC, they were the ones that were doing the Olympic coverage. They're the ones that we didn't have. Anybody else who was reporting on the Olympics was using stuff that was coming out of NBC's footage. So it's sort of like that. It's, they were the primary network that had gotten the Olympic coverage for that year. And they wanted to continue to control the feed. They also were fighting, sending it back to ABC News back home because it's like they can control and keep the feed live so that people can watch what's going on live, whereas ABC News has to sort of take the footage and report it in their nightly newscast type of thing. So there's a lot of control going on here and a lot of that balance back and forth. And the reason why the film works is script and editing and then direction. When you have a strong script that has, sort of like this non-wasteful dialogue, like everything is there, it really supports this sort of rapid pace that the film feels like it has at times, almost like a frenetic edge of your seat thriller. I think heading into this, a lot of people thought it was going to be like Spotlight. Spotlight kind of sits back more, and that's the difference. If people are trying to use Spotlight as a possible, could September 5 go on to win Best Picture? I mean, they're not really the same thing. Spotlight allows people to talk and have performances and have reactions. It really sits and talks to victims. This one doesn't have a whole lot of time to do that. When it does talk to those people, it doesn't really have time to. Like it talks to one of the people who was able to get out, but it's not really a focus of the thing because they can't stay on that. There's all these interesting reasons why they can't do the things that would normally pull them into the Best Picture top 10. All of those moments that I think that Oscar voters are typically looking for, which are those emotional bagging things. But at the same time, I can't fault it for having just such a really tight feel. Like like, this is it. Like, that was it. That was great. You know, I mean, why could it have been longer? Sure. And it would have supported likely performances. It would have, you would have then found yourself maybe with a supporting actor or actress nomination. But in the meantime, I don't see why this couldn't be nominated for Best Picture. I don't see why this isn't a screenplay play, and I don't see why this isn't editing. This should definitely be at least the latter of the two. So um, I really enjoyed the audio description to it. It's an interesting narrator that I'd never heard before. I don't know if this is the same narration that you guys are getting in theaters. Um, but or if it was like placeholder from festivals or whatever. But what I found really interesting about his narration, first of all, it's really well done narration. I mean, there's a lot of bouncing around. Again, the editing in here is there's a lot. The cast is an ensemble, so you're constantly bouncing around and having to tell people who's who. So there's a lot of audio description here to do as well. So the writer of this, a lot of props to you on that. But I actually like the fact he sounded like he was like he himself could be a newscaster, which I found to be interesting. Like if he wanted to break away from doing audio description, I could hear him reading the news at the end of the day. We've got, and we move over here to see this. It just, he sort of had that like newscaster vibe to him. And I was like, man, that's like a perfect marriage for September 5 is putting him, is finding this voice that's all about bringing breaking news and having also an audio description narrator who sounds like he's bringing you the breaking news of September 5, the movie. Um, so yeah, I was very pleasantly pleased. I was pleased as punch by this horrific event. I'm sorry, it's not funny, but it is. It's weird when we enjoy films that are about terrible things. You know, it's weird to come on here and be like, my favorite movie of the year is Zone of Interest. It's like, I mean, I did 2 years ago. I said All Quiet on the Western Front. Sometimes you get so moved by something, and you're like, damn, that was an experience. For me with September 5, I think what ruined it is the existence of Munich. It's like, and I know that I shouldn't say that about All Quiet on the Western Front, but I felt like with All Quiet on the Western Front, when that came out 2 years ago, um, there's something about the way that Edward Berger attacked that in a way that we hadn't really seen, and it was a very different narrative. Nobody was trying to save Private Ryan. It was so absolutely bleak of a war film that I couldn't think of anything that was that bleak. That was, I mean, that opening shot where you see where the uniform comes from, it's just like, what the, I mean, like the whole movie's like that though, and it's just relentless. And so it was this like traumatic experience of living through it like once and being like, I never want to see that movie again, but oh my God. Um, and it's like, it did somehow feel different. And while I was watching September 5, it just made me want to watch Munich and be like, and compare the two films. So if I'm thinking about what is keeping this from being the best picture of the year for me, it's sadly, it's the existence of Munich. And wanting to go back and revisit that and be like, well, what are the parallels? What are the differences? What are the choices that are made here? It's not really fair to September 5 because I think September 5 might actually be the better movie. I wasn't like a giant fan of Munich, but it made me want to revisit another movie, which is both like a pro and a con. But whenever you start I didn't want to revisit anything after All Quiet on the Western Front. Um, I prior to that, I considered Saving Private Ryan to be the best war movie that I'd ever seen. You can debate that. You can tell me Apocalypse Now. I've seen Apocalypse Now. That's a fine film. You know, whatever your other war choices are there, that's totally debatable. But Saving Private Ryan sticks with you. But All Quiet on the Western Front, I feel like came through and just topped it even more with its bleakness, just unrelentingly. So I felt like I never needed to see another war movie again. After that, I was just like, well, I'm done. Um, it didn't make me want to see another war movie. It didn't go, well, I want to pop this in. Whereas September 5 made me want to pop in other things. So I don't, I disagree with sort of like the spotlight comparison just because the films are tonally different and their energy is completely different. I love the fact that this has the energy. I love the fact that this has the editing and the screenplay. I think a lot of that is powered by the director. I don't know. It's so hard with a director who doesn't have quite the profile to think, is this his bold debut? And then what would he do with this debut? Like, what is he going to do forward moving from September 5? Like, what is his vision? Because this feels like somebody who has this skill, but when you're talking about the five best directors of the year, often you look for that auteur performance. For me, I look for a film that could not have been made without that director. A film that lives and dies based on the vision of the director, and that you feel that director's vision, and the director was part of the reason why that film was successful. And I'm not familiar with this director, and I don't know that that's the case here. I don't know that somebody else couldn't have made with an excellent team, that we couldn't have just swapped in the director and had the same experience. I don't know that this doesn't live and die with the script. You know what I'm saying? Like such a tight script resulted in tight editing, and then the casting director assembled the right team of actors for this. So oftentimes when I think about best director of the year, I think about those kind of things. I think about, who do I feel like creatively drove the film, and without that person behind the camera, that film would not exist, or certainly would not be any good. Last year, my pick, just to give you an example, was Greta Gerwig for Barbie. Barbie was not my best picture of the year, but I felt like creatively, you can't look at Barbie and say, I mean, a thousand other directors would have went in different directions. She chose one direction, and it creatively worked, and it worked in a big way. And I was very disappointed she didn't at least get a director nomination, because she absolutely deserved it for that reason. So that's kind of where my head's at. I'm giving you all of my September 5 because I was able to enjoy all of September 5. I think it's an excellent film. I think it could end up in my... I don't know where it's going to end up. I haven't ranked my films yet, but I know I've given more than 10 A's, so I don't know where it's going to end up. But it's... Yeah, it was an experience. And that runtime, that's a tight runtime, so no excuses. If you see September 5 running around near you and you got 95 minutes, get up in it. By the way, it's like 95 minutes with credits. So if you need to shave off like 2 or 3 minutes, like most people do when the credits start rolling, it's really a little bit shorter. So I probably shouldn't promote that, but whatever. September 5th is right where it deserves to be. And we'll see if it gets a Best Picture nomination. Anyway, I'm going to give September 5, I think I called it September 5th at least once. It's so hard. September 5, an A. I think this is excellent. So it's funny how both Paramount movies I loved. I also gave an A to Better Man. So they just need to campaign them better. I don't know what to say. People need to be getting out there and just talking about them more. But I'm here, and I'm talking about September 5. So thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. And I will see you guys on the other side.